goals are, I don't know, 30% reduction in cost per interaction, there is no possible way you can get there without having autonomous AI agents. Like just having post-call help to shorten after-call work or during call next best action isn't going to get you there. So that's one type of project where we're able to get people in some cases like 80% cost savings, 90% cost savings. So it's wild in that perspective.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Summitly Sessions. My name is Chris Kesler, the founder of Summitly, and really excited to introduce my guest for today's session. We have the co-founder and CEO of Regal, Alex, with us. Hi, Alex. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to start off by giving you an opportunity to just kind of give a little background, maybe introduce yourself, help everyone understand, like, how did you come across the idea of Regal and starting the business, and what were you trying to accomplish when you created it originally?
Sure. So before this, I used to run a contact center, a pretty big one, for the largest home services company in the world. And I joke that I used to be part of the problem. And, it was not intentional. It was sort of, we did what we were told, everyone thought was the future. We built a great self-serve, website and app. We made every digital channel available. And then we stopped using phone as much. And like customers were pissed, they expected all of that stuff, but they still wanted to be able to communicate with us anytime they wanted in the channel they wanted. And I think, the voice is not going away. It's sort of one of the big learnings we had out of that. I'd say some of the other big learnings were customers hated coming on and having to repeat themselves. If they told us once, they did not want to have to tell us again. And they assumed we should know everything, which is pretty logical, about their account. And I'd say the last piece is, where we could go above and beyond and proactively, reach the customers instead of waiting until everything went wrong. If we could, go, oh, well, in the home services case, like I see the professional that's coming to your house is late. I am on top of it. I'm taking responsibility for this, and I'm going to make sure. So I think those are some of the critical pieces we saw. So we ultimately started Regal on the premise that we could help, treat customers like royalty, improve the experience for customers. And those are the three areas we invested in, voice, how to make sure we have the data so that each call we can treat millions of customers like one in a million and really personalize it. And how do we start doing it more proactively and less sort of waiting until everything goes wrong? At this point, we serve about 200 customers, and one of the things we're very proud of is we've raised the CSAT for all those customers. So a big part of the story definitely is we help save money because we help use technologies like AI and automation to extend the reach of the brands. But we help all those companies raise CSAT. So as we think about what's happening over the next few years, I'd say the biggest transition now is starting to build in more autonomous AI agents or digital workers, if you want to call them that, into your contact center. So it's not all either just self-serve or bots or humans. You now have this new thing, these AI agents, and figuring out how to use them appropriately.
Oh, I mean, that's amazing. I think when you and I talked last time, you mentioned that you had that history of running a call center, and obviously that's probably the best place to come from as far as seeing what happens in the trenches and some of those problems. But you started this back in 2020, right? So the whole idea and landscape of like AI must have been dramatically different. You see all the crazy changes and evolution. So when you first started it, kind of what did you think the vision and the opportunity was that you were going to help with? And I'd be curious to see like how has that evolved to today when you look back?
So the vision was very similar. I think the underlying technologies have just gotten so much better over the last 5 years. So whether it's a human having that interaction or a legacy natural language processing or intent detection type bot, or now an AI agent, we have the same theory, right? We want to make sure the customer can always reach us how we want and that they have a good experience. But by far, like the luckiest thing that happened to us is the advent of sort of these new LLMs and these new AI models, because it raises the capabilities around reasoning and decision making way above whatever was possible before. Now, that doesn't mean that companies can magically all of a sudden become an AI business. Like there's still a lot of work to do to correctly implement that within their business specifically. And that's the fun part of what we get to do is we get to go in and map their full customer experience, integrate into their CRM and their contact center systems, understand their current SOPs, and start rolling out AI agents to help them, reach the goals they have. It's not like people want to disappoint customers. It's just there's a core conflict of, as a brand, every time you put a human being on the phone, there's a real expense to that, and the customer doesn't see it that way. They just want that, that high touch experience. And so I think the beauty now with AI agents particularly is that we can provide that much higher touch experience, raise the CSAT, and do it at a much lower cost than ever before.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. And I think, like you mentioned, as a consumer, you just kind of assume and expect that the vendor or the business has access to all the right tools, has the right information. You don't realize until you're behind the scenes in a call center or running a business that, well, there's data over here in a CRM and there's other stuff over here. And, I just transferred the call from this team to this team, and some of the information didn't transfer over. And so there's so many points of friction and so many things that are just frustrating. And I think the overall sentiment that I see with my clients is that their customers are more than happy to engage with an AI agent in any instance where they can actually get a resolution to what they're looking for. As long as it's effective, as long as it's easy to use, if they can solve whatever I need, then more than happy to talk to an AI agent. It's obviously once you get a little more.
If you're saying, hey, here's an AI and all they can do is answer 3 questions, and then a human agent can do that plus take these 5 actions, and a manager is the only one who can give a refund. Well, the pissed off customer who needs a refund is going to have to go through 3 layers before they go to a refund. So that's not good for anybody. So the trick is, how do you make sure that even from relatively early on, your plan is to empower whoever is the frontline person, so whether it's an AI agent or a human agent, to make the right decisions. And that doesn't mean giving everybody a refund, but it means going through the right set of questions and then ultimately being able to take the resolution that is appropriate for the business and the customer.
Right. Yeah, no, completely agree. I saw that you did a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, and one thing that you shared there that I've seen as well is, I think you said, let's see, businesses are taking more time to evaluate AI tools and the bar is higher. And I've definitely seen that as well. I would say a year or two ago, a lot of my clients were just wanting to deploy AI anywhere they could. They just needed to throw things out there. And they kind of expected, maybe they believed the hype, but they expected, hey, I could turn this on and it's going to deliver amazing results. I had many instances where I would go back and ask the client, well, how did that help your business? And they would say, well, I think it helped, or whatever. They couldn't connect the dots. And so today, clients are going through a lot more due diligence. They're spending more time. They want to make sure that if they go through all the time and energy expense, that there is going to be a clear ROI. So I'm just curious with you, as you're interfacing with all your clients and your prospective clients, what are some of the main things that they want to accomplish? Hey, we're looking at implementing your platform, but it has to do A, B, and C. Like, what are they hoping to accomplish with your platform?
It's a good question. So I think one of the transitions is, before it was sort of, well, I just want to learn about AI. Now it's not that anymore. Now it's either, my boss has set a budget, so we need to save, X dollars per interaction over the next year, or it's, hey, our business is seasonal, our business is growing, and I can't keep up with it, so I need to find new resources to go be able to support the customers. Or it might be like, we have this vision for a whole new experience, which wasn't possible before with humans, that is possible now with AI. And I can give examples of each, but each of those are now more concrete, budgeted projects where they have resources to go after it. They're going to evaluate the vendors, pick the one that's the right partner for them, and then really go at that. So the time to decide on a partner might be a little bit longer, but the outcomes are going to be much better because they have all the right resources internally, and it's actually in the budget and something that they need to go do to be successful in that year. Net, it's a very positive situation. And I think last year, a lot of companies were coming to us going, well, I read this news that, 80% of AI projects fail. I don't think that was necessarily accurate, but that was sort of the, what was in the zeitgeist. I think today it's a very different situation. It's going, well, my friend is at this contact center. They haven't told anybody, but, this is having a massive impact on their business, and they don't want their competitors to know, in the positive. So, people are really starting to engage more. So to the specific examples, I think on the cost-cutting side, a typical contact center, let's say you're doing support, I don't know, 30 or 40% of your team is going to turn over in a year. So if you have to do it normally, you're going to have to spend a lot of time and a lot of expense hiring and the training and nesting before they're even live. And then, a human, let's say in the US, costs about $1 a minute on the phone, all in, or, in the Philippines offshore, maybe 30 cents a minute. And you have to pay for an 8-hour shift. And, if it takes you 9 weeks to get them up to speed, you can't just like turn them on tomorrow. So on the other side, with AI agents, you're talking about closer to, 15 cents per minute. So a fraction of that. It's fully variable, so it can go up and down however you want, even within like, a minute. It doesn't have to be shift work. And it, takes much less time to get them ready. Once the AI agent is ready, you don't have to train and train and train and re-coach and coach and coach. Like, you now have the AI agent ready. So I think from a cost to serve perspective, if you want to cut 2 or 3% by having some extra deflection in IVR file, but if your goals are, I don't know, 30% reduction in cost per interaction, there is no possible way you can get there without having autonomous AI agents. Like just having post-call help to shorten after-call work or during call next best action isn't going to get you there. So that's one type of project where we're able to get people in some cases like 80% cost savings, 90% cost savings. So it's wild in that perspective. And that does not mean we're going and firing people willy-nilly. It's not that. It's just instead of constantly hiring new people that are going to underperform, it's using AI agents to do the simpler things and letting your better agents do the ones that are more complicated. So the second scenario that I was going through a little bit is, maybe there's an opportunity to, let's say, drive some new revenue. So we have a banking partner, for instance, where they historically never talked to new customers. It's too expensive. And marketing didn't want to, marketing was constantly changing their positioning. They didn't want to have to constantly train humans. Now, marketing programmatically uses AI agent to call every single new customer. And those are sometimes 20-minute conversations about, why they should use banking and what are the different products available and what is the right product for them so that they can make the right decisions. And it's interesting that the customer who was ashamed of asking a human those questions is perfectly happy to ask an AI for all those answers that they didn't know the answer to. So we see that actually increases the lifetime value of the customer. In that case, materially, the assets under management at the bank go up because they're doing that. Another example, we have a customer in the insurance space that is able to go from, really missing a lot of the inbound calls when people were trying to call them and buy the insurance. So now they answer 100% of calls instantly. So they never miss a call and it's instant. And the AI actually converts people at a higher rate than humans.
Really?
So the AI is
Wow.
27% more effective at converting people than the humans. And when you talk to about CSAT, the customers rate the AI excellent 77% of the time. So they really think it's like a very, very good experience. So that sort of use case to turn a contact center from just being seen as a cost center to being a revenue driver is a very important one. But yeah, we can go through other examples too if you like.
I think those are all amazing examples. I've had discussions with clients, I think really that apply to most of those different use cases. And I think to your point, no one's really going to eliminate jobs or just cut the workforce, but call center for whatever reason is still one of those areas where there's just a lot of really outdated legacy manual processes. And there's, I love the outbound example because to your point, if you have to pay somebody $1 a minute to make outbound calls to every customer, the other thing to consider in that instance is those people are getting paid for waiting on the phone while they hope someone answers the phone. Whereas an AI agent, I assume, is just being, used for actual voice interaction. So the dialing portion of it, you're not sitting there paying an agent for that portion of it as well. Mm-hmm. So the opportunity, to leverage AI agents for certain scenarios like that is a lot easier. I think I'd love to dig a little deeper. If you have one example, I don't care which of those three or other examples you have, but where we can give listeners a real world example of, hey, they had 200 agents. Here's their scenario that they were dealing with before. Yeah. They deployed our solution. Here's kind of the financial impact that they saw per year by deploying our solution. That way they can kind of connect the dots for their own business. If you have something like that, I'd love to dig a little deeper into that.
Yeah, for sure. So, take it on like a cost per interaction basis. So like we have a customer who in this insurance, let's say an insurance example where they're selling Medicare Advantage plans. And so part of the challenge there is it's a segment of the population that's a little bit older. It's a complicated product. It gets sold basically all in Q4, and so there's a massive
Mm-hmm.
seasonality to it. And historically, this customer used Nice and Contact as their contact center, and they, had to hire people, offshore, but also in the U.S. to handle that surge in volume. It was very hard to train the people, and like I said, for U.S. based, you're talking about $1 a minute. Offshore, you're talking about 30 cents a minute. And so we were able to get AI agents in this case performing better than humans. First of all, like it's better for the business, but at
Mm-hmm.
a cheaper cost, so at 15 cents a minute. So that's 80% saving, 85% saving versus a US agent, 80% saving versus an offshore agent, and you're only paying variably for your needs. You don't have to pay for the shift. So actually, like on a utilization standpoint, you're completely different. You have much, much better utilization, and you can focus on not like having to constantly train a million people, which takes a lot of time and effort. And instead, the operating rhythm of the company has shifted to the place where now they're spending more time on iteration and improvements and not just like hiring and training people. So in terms of cost savings, they're at a scale where, those 80% savings across a very large team
Mm-hmm.
is, in the millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. So that's a very exciting cost saving for them in that specific scenario. But I think if you only look at these as cost saving opportunities, you're missing the point. Like, yes, it is true that now you have it's like saying, I have a website. And yes, it's true that a website is cheaper than a person selling the product in the store. But if you said a website is just a cost saving opportunity, you're missing the point, right? A website is an opportunity to reach way more people than ever before and, serve them in a way that wasn't possible before because you give them more information before they have to make a decision. So now with AI agents, think about it in the same way. It's an enabling technology. So we can serve way more customers before because it's cost effective and allow them to make better decisions because they can go through and actually have a real conversation about what is right for them. So ultimately, like that AI agent is getting to know me, Alex, what is my profile? What are my needs? The next time I call in, I don't need to repeat myself again. Like I can pick right back up from where I was. It's then very flexible in terms of the different needs that I have. One day it might be support, one day it might be claims, one day it might be, buying a new policy, and is able to seamlessly go back and forth without just sticking me on hold or transferring me to somebody else that has no context as to what I'm doing. So to some extent, it goes back to the old style of a local insurance professional that came over to your house and ate pie with your family, got to like that's what we're getting back to using AI. So to some extent, AI makes the process more human, which is a crazy thing to think about, because contact centers became these factory lines where we just never really got to know our customers. And that was very difficult for customers because it felt to them like a brand didn't care about them.
I think, especially with that example, like you said, when you're at scale, you have all these siloed different groups and teams, all of these different technology solutions that are having to be leveraged to support each customer. Then, to your point, yeah, it feels very mechanical, and you're being bounced from one thing to the next, and nothing flows, and they don't know you, and all of those things. So, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that what you just said kind of reminds me of a discussion I had recently with another friend of mine, where it seems like in these scenarios, clients might have an initial idea of the ROI or the business impact or the case study that they want to try to address with AI. But then once they start deploying it and they start digging deeper, they start realizing there's all of these other opportunities and areas within the business that it can benefit. Are you seeing that with your clients as well? They come
Yeah.
to you and say, man, we really want to do this one thing. And then they're like, holy cow, we can use it for this and that and the other thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we intentionally structure our initial engagements where we're spending a lot of time in a consultative motion with our customers, understanding the life cycle, where the opportunities are, helping them learn about how AI works so that we can identify more of these opportunities. Because it's not always what you'd expect.
Hmm.
So like humans are great at certain things, right? So like there's no doubt, but there are big limitations to human agents. If you ever run a contact center, like there's a shift. They're not omniscient. They're hard to train. They want to take bathroom breaks. These are just
Yeah.
like structural limitations. AI agents on the other side have are not yet perfect. They don't sound all the way human. I think we're a year, maybe a year and a half away from that. But they're always available, never angry. They go from call to call and be super happy. Right? They're omniscient. They have every piece of context. as you get into it, it's about like how do you leverage that technology to create a new experience for your customer. So that the companies that are able to do that effectively are not going to recognize themselves in 2-3 years. Like they're going to go from a website, app, self-serve experience being the main interface to voice being the main interface. So if I think about, like this, like when we built computers, we had this thing and we had this, but that was only because we didn't know how to interface with the computers via voice. And so these were not a advantage, these were a disadvantage. So for the first time, we can change to a conversational interface so that the human computer interface becomes voice. And that, as you get used to it, is super empowering, right? You just constantly can be asking questions and updating the brand, what you need, and getting exactly the service that's right for you. Instead of going, like, if I just don't want to deal with this now because it's going to be an hour on hold and then they're going to like ask me to repeat myself. Like, that's a big shift. And in the end, it's, results in like more loyalty actually, like, people sticking with the brands longer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's going to be really interesting. How do you see that working with other channels like text, like chat? Do you see those still playing a role? And obviously, as you mentioned, with voice becoming kind of coming back because now voice can be more effective than it has been with AI. How do you see that playing with text and chat?
So look, I love self-serve in whatever format. Like that's obviously an option that's very important. I don't think email and SMS are going anywhere. Those are very important asynchronous channels when you can't do it live. I actually think, chat is going to disappear. Like chat was a terrible, terrible idea. It was this thing that only persists within a web page, and then if you like leave the web page, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
They create this weird flow that's very formulaic. If you want it asynchronous, go use SMS, which is a much better way to have a one-to-one relationship that's persistent over time. I hate that, you close the web page and the chat is gone and everything is forgotten. That's terrible. So I think chat long run is going to go away. And yeah, I think voice today is 60-70% of interactions, and I think will be 90%. One of the areas that voice will get more use is today voice is mostly phone. So you think about voice as a phone call. More and more you're going to see what's called WebRTC, which is within a website, you're just going to click a button and you're going to talk to the computer within a website or within an app. It's not even going to be a phone call. It's not even going to run through the telephony network at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. So almost chat will be replaced by WebRTC voice on the website potentially, and then you'll have text as kind of the asynchronous.
Yeah, I mean, you talk faster than you type.
Yeah.
So even asynchronously, if you're in a meeting, sure you need to type, but other than a meeting, now I do almost everything in terms of voice. So when I draft emails, when I sort of give follow-ups, once you get into the habit of using voice, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, I saw on your website, I don't know if this is a newer feature or release, but there was a product listed there for a, kind of a streamlined agent desktop experience. Obviously, we talked a little bit about that, how agents historically, they have all these different systems and tools and processes, and that adds to a lot of the reasons that there's issues with voice and how difficult that is. So maybe you could dive a little bit into that and kind of the ROI impact that you see a feature like that providing to a business.
Sure. So we work very well with the existing telephony solutions, NICE, Genesis, Five9, what have it. So that's fine. If you have agents there, we can transfer back and forth. We can do human in the loop, all those things. If you want to put the human agents in Regal, there are a few more things we can do because we've created capabilities that none of those systems have. So we're able to do much more fine-tuned orchestration and routing based off of what we know. We're able to have multiple people on the same call interacting. So basically, I'd say there are some advantages. So we have our customers that sort of believe most in our vision of having that one unified customer experience eventually do move their human agents into Regal and stop using their CCaaS solution. That is not a requirement. But I do think in a world where you have 1,000 agents on NICE and very little on Regal, it makes sense to have NICE. But if one day you have 100 agents on NICE and the majority of interactions on Regal, well, yeah, why have two systems where the legacy system doesn't have the same capabilities and is limiting the experiences you can create for your end customer? Makes no sense.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. No, I've actually been having some discussions, with other partners where my sentiment and thought is that the way that we look at technologies and the systems that are being used historically, when you think about things like ACD, IVR, even CRM, those are all ways to structure data and functionality that was required historically. But with AI, why do you need a CRM that tells you how you have to structure the customer's data? Why do you need an ACD that supposedly can tell you, well, how do I route this call to this agent based on skills and
Yeah.
these other things? Like AI eliminates the need for all of that.
Yeah, like I'll give you a real example. So like we obviously have deterministic IVR still if you need, but we have also the ability to use LLMs to do routing. So it's non-deterministic, right? It's reasoning based on what we know, like what should the next, action be. And for outbound as an example, instead of saying let's call the customer 5 times a day for 5 days, which was how dialers used to work, like we can be much lower volume and much higher impact by watching the behavior of the customer on a website and making sure we're reaching out at exactly the right moment. Making sure that interaction is very helpful. Like it looks like you're having trouble logging in. Let me help you, rather than just being, again, a factory that's treating everybody the same.
Yeah, I remember. So I spent 15 years managing sales teams at NICE, and I remember there was a client that wanted or needed like over, I think it was like 1,000 skills. And that was just like, what the heck? How do you need that many skills?
Yeah.
But then you think about it, and with AI, there's an unlimited number of skills and combinations of, well, who is Alex, and what are all the reasons we'd need to route
Yeah.
him here or there, or whatever
I'll
prioritization.
pick on dispositions. Like
Yeah.
dispositions imply that in one conversation only one thing happens. That's a
Yeah, what would
crazy.
put a label on this one call? You talk for 15 minutes and give it one category, or
No,
even
it's crazy.
oh, we need sub drop down menus to categorize this call. So you might have two or
Yeah.
three sub, but then it's like, but now you just go into Regal, you go into whatever system, and you say, how many calls do we have about this subject and
Correct. Now we do semantic
trending
analysis
topics?
and know all the topics. We know what's happening. We know that there's an issue, and we can automatically
Mhm.
then start, acting on that.
It's amazing. As we wrap up here, I think this has been a great conversation. What if there's still, I would say, majority of contact centers are still in legacy mode where they're using ACD, IVR, classic reporting, classic scheduling. They may have started to dip their toe into AI, maybe for some call deflection and things like that. I'm seeing more and more that they almost need to have this attitude of like, hey, there's massive opportunity for us to leverage AI. Let's just bring in vendors like Regal and start uncovering where we can, start using it. But what would you say to those legacy contact centers, those businesses that really haven't fully embraced it yet? Where should they start? And what kind of strategy would you suggest that they start to take so that they can really start to experience the benefits of platforms like Regal?
Yeah. Well, one thing is I think sometimes people use legacy to mean, hey, you're not yet fully digital, only digital channels and only self-serve. But you know what? I admire the companies that stuck up for their customers and continued to invest in phone support when everybody else said, oh no, I'm not going to do it. It's too expensive. So
Mm-hmm.
first of all, like I don't look at the companies that continue to do human phone support as a bad thing. To the contrary, I think like all power to them. And I think philosophically we're very aligned with them. And the sort of push is, okay, now for the first time, the technology is good enough that instead of having to make trade-offs, well, like how much is this going to cost me? How long am I going to have to trade this agent? Like, is it going to create the right experience? You can use AI to eliminate those trade-offs, right? So it can be a much lower cost. It can be personalized. You don't have to trade. So I think it's about leaning into the things that you as a business are good at and leaning into your differentiated, points. So if you're an insurance company, a big part of insurance is the customer experience, right? If you're a
Mm-hmm.
school, a big part of that is how are you engaging with current students and making sure they're finding the right next classes. And a text, a chat is not enough. Like a conversation is what's really going to help you drive to that outcome in something that's such a difficult and personal decision. And so in businesses where trust is required, where they're higher consideration, yeah, voice is so critical. And the unlock of not having to constantly worry that you're going to outspend your budget is enormous. Like I remember those stresses when I was running a contact center of like I knew like I had to like cut my staff by 5% that month or not have as many hours because I had to hit my budget, even if that meant CSAT went down. That's a terrible trade-off to have to like do every month. So I think it's about, finding these brands who believe strongly in.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think you guys are on the right track. I've been really impressed with the platform. Um, and yeah, I think the discussions I'm having with my clients are very similar in the sense that, hey, you're not like shutting down your agents. You're not getting rid of that to replace it with AI and robots and all those kinds of things. It's how do we provide a better experience? How do we make those teams more efficient? Um, give your customers more support in the channels that they're looking for. So I think what you suggested that's a great plan. I really appreciate the conversation and the time today, Alex. This has been awesome. I think for people that aren't familiar with Regal, regal.ai is the website. I'm sure you can hit up Alex on LinkedIn, hit me up. I'm happy to make some introductions. But I think a platform like Regal, every one of my clients I'm having discussions with to figure out, where are those opportunities? How can we move the needle within the business with a solution like Regal? So again, thanks for your time, Alex. This has been great. And we'll talk to you next time. Okay. See ya.